Good morning, children. Today we are going to see about control and coordination, new chapter in biology. Okay, so in this chapter we are going to see how our body will respond to stimuli. Okay, and what are the organ system involved in the control and coordination of our body. Okay, since our body is performing different function, all the activities which take place in the body is controlled and coordinated by certain organ system in our body. Okay, so let us see the introduction of this lesson. Human body, it is a complex machine, it is performing millions of functions and processes to maintain and sustain life. So all living organism, either animal or plant, they both can respond and react to changes in the environment. So the changes in the environment to which the organisms respond and react are called stimuli. Okay, so if anyone is reacting or any changes we are observing in the environment, we will react, we will respond according to the changes in our environment or in our surrounding. Yes, so the changes in the environment to which the organisms respond and react are called stimuli. Okay, so what is meant by stimuli? The changes in the environment to which the organisms respond and react. So both plants and animals respond to stimuli. So in this class, let us see about control and coordination in animals. Okay, so control and coordination in animals is done with the help of two main systems. They are nervous system and endocrine system. Okay, so as I have already told, the various activity take place in the body is controlled and coordinated by certain organ system. So in animal, control and coordination is done by mainly two system, that is called nervous system and endocrine system. Okay, so hormones. What are hormones? Hormones are chemical messengers which will assist nervous system to carry out various functions. Okay, as we know that nervous system is involved in the control and coordination of our body functions. Hormones, they are the chemical messengers. They will assist, they will help nervous system to carry out various functions. Understood, children? Now, so these hormones are secreted by endocrine glands. Okay, so endocrine glands or the glands which is secreting the hormones, which are the chemical messengers which assist nervous system to carry out various functions of our body. So hormones present in plants, it will coordinate the movement of the plant. So let us see briefly about the nervous system which take part in the control and coordination in animals. Okay, so control and coordination provided by nervous and muscular tissue. So nervous system is formed of nervous tissue. Yes. So nervous tissue, last year in 9th standard you might have learned as. So nervous system is made up of a network of nerve cells. You know, group of cells form tissue. Yes. So group of nerve cells of forming nervous tissue. Okay, so the network of nerve cells is also called as neurons. Okay, so what is the other name of nerve cells? Neurons. Okay, Now we will see the function of neurons. So neurons specialized for conducting information through electrical impulses from one part of the body to other. Okay, so neurons help for the transformation of information in the form of electrical impulses from one part of the body to other. Now we can see functions of nervous system. So nervous system receives information from the environment. Okay, so our body will respond and react according to the changes in the environment, isn't it? So our nervous system will receive information from the environment. Not only that, it will receive the information from the various body parts and it will act according to muscles and glands. Okay, so nervous system will receive information from the environment. It also receive the information from the various body parts. It will act according to muscular tissue and glands present in the human body. Okay, so this is about the functions of nervous system. Understood, children? So what are the functions of nervous system? It will receive information from the environment. It will receive the information from various body parts. It will act according to muscular tissue and glands. Now we can see about receptors. So what is meant by receptors? So receptors are nothing but they are the specialized tips of some nerve cells which will detect the information from the environment. Okay, so once the changes caused in the environment, the particular information can be identified by the specialized tip of some nerve cells. It is called receptors. Okay, so what is meant by receptors? They are the specialized tips of some nerve cells which will identify the information from the environment. So receptors are located in the sense organs. So how many sense organs are there? We know that there are 5 sense organs. Yes, what are they? Tongue, skin, then ear, eye, nose. Yes, so these receptors are located in the sense organs. Okay, so let us see the 5 types of receptors which present in the sense organs. Okay, first receptor is phonoreceptor. Phonoreceptor is our ear. Okay, so our ear acts as a phonoreceptor, so it will receive the sound and help in hearing and maintaining the balance of the body. Okay, so our ear, that is the sense organ which will act as the phonoreceptor, helps in hearing and maintaining the balance of the body. Now next receptor is photoreceptors. So our eyes will act as the photoreceptors. So they will receive the light and helps in seeing. Okay, so eyes act as photoreceptors. It will receive light. It helps in seeing. Now third type of receptor is thermoreceptor. So our skin acts as a thermoreceptors. So skin can feel the temperature. So whether it is cold or hot, the temperature can be felt by our skin. Okay, so skin acts as a thermoreceptors. It helps in feeling heat or cold and touching of other organism. Okay, so skin acts as the thermoreceptor which helps in feeling heat or cold and as well as touch. So next receptor is, that is olfactory receptor. So nose acts as an olfactory receptors which helps in the detection of smell. Okay, so nose help us to detect smell. Next, tongue is the sense organ which acts as the gustatory receptors. So sense of taste. So it helps in detection of taste. Okay. So once again we will repeat what are the 5 types of receptors. Phonoreceptors. So ear act as a phonoreceptor. Eye act as the photoreceptor. Then thermoreceptor. Skin act as a thermoreceptor. Nose act as a olfactory receptor. Then gustatory receptor, that is tongue, which helps in the detection of taste. Understood, children? Now we can move to neuron. So neuron, you know, our nervous system or our nervous tissue is formed of a network of nerve cell which is called as neuron. Yes. So now we can see about the structure and function of neuron. So neuron is called as the structural and functional unit of the nervous system. Okay, as we know that nervous system is made up of nerve cell, that is neuron. So neuron is called the structural and functional unit of the nervous system. Now, what are the parts of neuron? This also I have studied in 9th standard. Let us remember about the recall about that parts of neuron. So what are the parts of neuron? Dendrite, cell body, axon. Okay, here is the diagram of neuron. Okay, here you can see the cell body which consists of nucleus and branched fiber, that is dendrite, and has a long fiber called axon, and there is the nerve endings. Okay, so the 3 main parts of neuron are dendrite, cell body and axon. First, so what is the function of neuron in the control and coordination of animals? Okay, so dendrite, it will receives information, and from the dendrite the information will travel in the form of electric impulse to the cell body, and from the cell body the information will travels in the form of electric impulse into the longest fiber on the cell body, that is called axon. Okay, so axon will transmit electric impulse from cell body to dendrite of next neuron. Okay, so this is the function which is done by neuron while it acquires information from the environment. Okay, so certain changes in the environment is received, or the information from the environment is received by dendrite of the neuron, and from the dendrite it will be travels in the form of electrical impulse to the cell body, and from the cell body it travels to the axon, which is the longest fiber on the cell body, and the axon transmit electric impulse from cell body to dendrite of next neuron. Understood, children? Now, types of neuron. So there are 2 types of neuron: sensory neuron, motor neuron. Okay, so what is the function of sensory neuron? Sensory neuron, it will transmit impulses from sensory organs to CNS. CNS means central nervous system. Okay, so sensory neuron will transmit impulses from sensory organ to central nervous system, and motor neuron, it will carries impulses from brain, that is central nervous system, and spinal cord to effector organs such as muscles. Okay, so sensory neuron means which is receiving the information from the environment and transmits impulses from the sensory organs to the central nervous system. So the organs involved in central nervous system are brain and spinal cord. Okay, so the sensory neuron will transmit impulses from sensory organs to brain and spinal cord, and motor neuron. So motor neuron will carries the message or the carries the impulse from the brain and spinal cord to effector organs such as muscles. So depending upon the impulses received from the brain and spinal cord, the effector organs will respond to the changes in the environment. Understood, children? Now, functioning of neuron. So, the information from receptors, you know, receptors, sense organs are receptors, no? So, the information from receptors occurred at the end of the dendrite tip of nerve cell or neuron in the form of chemical reaction. So, as a result of chemical reaction, it will create an electrical impulse, and this impulse travels from the dendrite to the cell body and then at the end of axon. So these chemicals are released at the end of the axon by the effect of electrical impulse, and these chemicals will cross the gap between the neuron to nearest neuron is called synapse. Okay, so chemicals are released at the end of the neuron by the effect of electrical impulses, and these chemicals will cross the gap and start a similar electrical impulse in the dendrite of the next neuron. Okay, and the similar synapse finally allows delivery of such impulses from neuron to other cell such as muscle cells or gland. Understood, children? So chemicals first the information will be occurred at the dendrite tip. Yes, so information will be occurred at the dendrite tip, then it will create an electrical impulse there, and this impulse will travel to the cell body, and from the cell body it travels to the end of axon, and from there the chemical will be released at the end of the axon by the effect of electrical impulses, and these chemicals will cross the gap and start the similar electrical impulse in the next neuron. Okay, dendrite of the next neuron, and the similar synapse finally allows the delivery of such impulses from one neuron to other cells such as muscle cells or gland. Now, what is meant by synapse? So, as I have already told, it is the gap between the nerve ending of one neuron and dendrite tip of the other neuron. Okay. So, in the picture you can see there is a gap between the nerve ending of one neuron and the dendrite tip of the other neuron. Okay. So, electrical signals which is released at the end of the axon of the one neuron will get converted into chemical signal in this gap, and further it is transmitted to the dendrite tip of the next neuron. Understood, children? So, the electrical signal which is released at the end of the axon will cross this gap. Yes. So, while crossing this gap, that is while crossing this synapse, these electrical signals get converted into chemical signals, and further it is transmitted to the dendrite tip of the other neuron. Understood, children? Now we can study about reflex action. So what is meant by reflex action? So we know our body will respond according to changes in the environment. Okay, so quick, sudden and immediate response of the body to a stimulus is called reflex action. Okay, so our body will respond, no, that immediate response, the quick and sudden immediate response of body to a stimulus is called reflex action. Example, knee jerk, withdrawal of hand on touching hot object. So when we are touching hot object, our hand will withdraw from the hot object. So we are suddenly or immediately responding to the certain changes in the environment. Okay, that is called reflex action. Okay, so reflex action means it is a quick, sudden, immediate response of the body to a stimulus. So already you know what is meant by stimulus, yes, which is the change in the external or internal environment to which an organism react. Then now we are going to see about reflex arc. So what is meant by reflex arc? The pathway through which nerve impulse pass during reflex action. The pathway means the way through which the nerve impulse will pass during reflex action. So reflex action means, you know, the sudden response of our body to the stimuli which happened in the environment, is it? So the reflex arc means the pathway through which the nerve impulse will travel during reflex action is called what? Reflex arc. Okay, so example, so heat. So we are touching now a hot object. Okay, example, consider we are going to touch one hot object. So hot object, we can observe what? Heat. Yes, so the change in the hot object is heat. Okay, that is considered as stimulus. So this is received by our receptor, that is skin. Okay, and from the skin it will travel with the help of neuron in the form of nerve impulses to spinal organ, that is spinal cord, and spinal cord will receive the information and it will give the message how to react to the effector organ. Okay, so effector organ, the message from the spinal cord will be received by the effector organ muscles, and the muscle will respond so that we can withdraw the hand from the hot object. Okay, so once heat is the stimulus, so which is received by the receptor, and once the receptor feel the heat, the nerve impulse, it is passed through the spinal organ, and the spinal organ will give the command to the effector organ how to respond. That is, example for the response is withdrawal of hand. Okay, now what is meant by reflex arc? So reflex arc means the pathway through which nerve impulses pass during reflex action is called reflex arc, isn't it? So in this picture you can see, first when we are touching the object or touching the hot object, the change or the heat will be received by our receptor, that is skin, and from the skin it is through the sensory neuron. So you know, sensory neurons are the neuron which will transmit the nerve impulses to the CNS, that is central nervous system. Okay, so once we are touching the any hot object, the heat will be feel by our receptor, that is skin, and these will pass in the form of nerve impulse by the sensory neuron to the CNS. CNS means spinal cord, and then it is passed to the brain. Okay, and from the central nervous system, the motor neuron will pass the nerve impulses to the effector organ, that is muscle. So our muscle will respond, that is withdrawal of hand from the hot object. Understood? So this is about reflex arc. So the pathway through which the nerve impulse travels for reflex action is called as reflex arc. Now, types of responses. So, our body will respond in three ways. They are voluntary responses, involuntary responses, and reflex action. Okay, so what is meant by voluntary responses? So voluntary responses is controlled by forebrain. Okay, so voluntary response means according to our wish, we can control the responses, certain responses. So controlled by forebrain, example talking, writing. Then involuntary responses, which is controlled by midbrain and hindbrain, example heartbeat, vomiting, respiration. Okay, so we cannot control these responses from our body, heartbeat, vomiting, respiration. Okay, so voluntary response means which can be controlled by forebrain, involuntary response controlled by midbrain and hindbrain. Then reflex action will be controlled by spinal cord, example withdrawal of hand on touching a hot object. Now, need for reflex action. So, in some situations, why there is a need for reflex action? So, some situations such as touching a hot object or pinching, etc., we have to act quickly. Okay, otherwise our body would be harmed. Okay, so here the response is generated from spinal cord. Okay, not from brain. Okay, if the brain have to give the response, means it will take time, which make our body body will be harmed. Okay, so that response will be suddenly generated from spinal cord instead of brain. So in this way, time for taking action is reduced, which save us from injury. Okay, so I hope that you all understand about receptors, reflex arc, reflex action, and neuron functions of neuron. If you have any doubt, you can ask children. Thank you.